Good afternoon. I call to order the June 4th, 2024 regular meeting of the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission. For the record, my name is Barbara Howard, and I'm serving as an acting chair for this afternoon's meeting. Just a reminder to please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices and to speak directly into the microphone, whether you're up here at the dais or speaking in front of us. Would the clerk please call the roll so that we verify the presence of a quorum?
Commissioner Booty.
Present.
Fisher.
Present.
Hare.
Present.
Howard.
Present.
Carato.
Present.
Maston.
Present.
Melblom.
Present.
Merrill.
Present.
Vice Chair Sandbolt and Chair Bjornberg are absent. There are 8 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect we do have quorum and that Chair Bjornberg and Vice Chair Sandbolt both provided proper notice that they had a conflict this afternoon, so their absences are excused. Our first order of business is to adopt an agenda for this meeting. We'll work from the agendas that are available over by the clerk, and I'll go through the agenda and sort out which items will be discussed and which items will be put on the consent agenda to be approved as recommended by staff and without further discussion. Item number 4, 115 2nd Avenue South, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 4 will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendations. Item number 5, 615 3rd Street North, Ward 3. Item number 5 is for a certificate of appropriateness, and it will be on consent unless someone wants to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. Item number 6, 305 5th Avenue North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. Item number 6 will be on consent unless someone wishes to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation. And finally, item number 7, the Glendale Town Homes, which is a number of addresses that are all on the agenda. On Delaware Street Southeast, Essex Street Southeast, St. Mary's Avenue Southeast, St. Mary's Place, 27th Avenue Southeast, and Williams Avenue Southeast. This application is for a nomination for Historic District. Item number 7 will be discussed. So the proposed agenda for this afternoon's meeting, the consent agenda, will include the following items. Item number 4, 115 2nd Avenue South, Ward 3. Item number 5, 615 3rd Street North, Ward 3. Item number 6, 305 5th Avenue North, Ward 3. Is there any opposition from commissioners to the staff recommendations for these 3 items? Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition to these 3 items? Hearing no opposition to placing these items on consent, we will approve these consent items in one motion at the start of the meeting. Item number 7 will have staff presentation, public comment, and commission discussion and action. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the proposed agenda?
Merrill, so moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Is there a second?
Maston seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Our next order of business will be to approve the minutes from our May 14th, 2024 meeting. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Melblom moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Is there a second?
Merrill, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions?
Fisher abstains.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Those minutes are approved. Before I open the hearing to public comments, let me summarize the process for conducting the public hearing. First, we'll act on the consent agenda that we just set. Once items on the consent agenda are approved, the commission is done with those items, and applicants may contact planning staff tomorrow about their next steps. After the consent agenda items are approved, we'll take the remaining agenda item. Planning staff will present its report, and commissioners may ask questions of staff. Then I'll open the public hearing, and we'll hear from the applicant. There isn't an applicant on this one, technically. And commissioners could ask questions if we had one. After that, we will invite public comment. If you wish to speak, you need to do 2 things. You need to sign up on a sheet that's over by the clerk. If you haven't done this already, you can do so afterwards. When you go up to testify, you have to state your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments specific to the application before us today. If we do have a lot of people here to speak on the item, we may limit the comments to 2 minutes each, and I'd ask you to focus on any new information that has not already been presented. If you have materials to hand out, also please give those to the committee clerk so that we can distribute them to the commission and enter them into the public record. Do not approach the commissioners on the dais. After the public comments are complete, I close the hearing and commissioners will deliberate and act on the application before us. So I will now open the public hearing on the consent agenda items. Once again, those are items number 4, 115 2nd Avenue South, Ward 3, item number 5, 615 3rd Street North, Ward 3, item number 6, 305 5th Avenue North, Ward 3. Again, do commissioners oppose the staff recommendations for these items?
This is where I ask questions.
If you want to ask questions about those 3 items, we have to pull it from the consent.
Okay.
Did you wish to pull it from consent?
I have a couple line items that I would like to ask questions on.
Okay, which one was that for?
4 and 5.
4 and 5?
Yes.
Okay, so we've pulled items 4 and 5 from consent. Let me just make a note here. So the only thing remaining on the consent agenda is item number 6, 305 5th Avenue North, Ward 3. Again, do commissioners oppose the staff recommendations for that item? Are there any members of the public who oppose the staff recommendation for item number 6? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on the consent agenda items. May I have a motion to approve staff findings and recommendations for item number 6?
Maston so moves.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Is there a second?
Merrill, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? That item is approved as recommended by staff on the agenda. Applicants can contact planning staff about next steps. So I'll give Andrea a moment to get things ready for your presentation. Are you good?
I am good.
Okay. Our first item is item number 4, 115 2nd Avenue South, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness, and the staff report is being presented by Andrea Burke for Aaron Kay.
Thank you, Secretary Howard. Good afternoon, Secretary Howard and Commissioners. My name is Andrea Burke, and I'm the supervisor in the Historic Preservation subsection of the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development. I'm here today to present a certificate of appropriateness application for the site improvements and exterior alterations to the first story of the property located at 115 2nd Avenue South in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. Excuse me. A letter of support from the Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association was submitted and included in your packet. Staff has received no other public correspondence about this project. The property is located at the corner of 2nd Avenue South and 2nd Street South, which is part of the Gateway District character area in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. The building was constructed in 1973 to 1975 and is a non-contributing resource to the historic district. It is a 16-story brick apartment building with 269 residential units and commercial space on the first floor in the south half. The primary elevation faces west. The applicant is planning to convert the commercial space into 6 residential units, which will add to the housing stock downtown. The application includes exterior alterations to the 4th story of the building and site modifications. On the west elevation, there are 4 storefront bays that will be modified. At the northernmost end of the south half of the building, the double-leaf metal and glass door will be replaced with a single-leaf metal and glass door and a fixed metal window. The metal sign in the transom area will be removed and replaced with a metal panel. In the remaining 3 storefront bays on the west elevation, the HVAC condensing units will be removed and replaced with glass. 3 condensing units will be mounted to the brick between the storefront bays. Each unit is about 3 feet by 2 feet by 1 foot deep. Each residential unit will get a slightly expanded concrete patio surrounded by a metal fence with narrow pickets. On the east elevation, 3 storefront bays will be modified. At the northernmost end, right side of the photo, a fixed metal window will be replaced with a single-leaf metal and glass door. Like the west elevation, the HVAC condensing units will be removed and replaced with glass. 4 condensing units will be mounted to the brick between the storefront bays. Each unit is also 3 feet by 2 feet by 1 foot deep. Each residential unit will get a small concrete patio, also surrounded by a metal fence with narrow pickets. Staff's analysis of the exterior building modifications finds the changes to be consistent with the original design of the building in terms of material and design for the windows and doors. There are mechanical vents below each fenestration bay on the upper 15 residential stories of the building, which is similar to the proposed approach for the mount condensing units on the wall. Moving on to the site improvements, here's a current view of the site in front of the building. Staff already approved a demolition permit to remove the playground equipment, the low retaining wall behind, and the trees. The approval allowed the applicant to begin interior demolition while they went through the HPC process. And here's a plan view documenting the changes. Here are the proposed plans for the site. The existing 6-foot-tall vinyl fence will remain in place. At the north end, the gate will be removed and a new vinyl gate will be added farther away from the building. A 10-foot-tall pergola will be built above the gate that's 9 feet 3 inches by 11 feet 5 inches square. The proposed material is either wood or composite. From the gate, there will be a sidewalk of concrete pavers that leads to a larger patio area. Along the western edge, there will be a larger pergola that is 10 feet 9 inches tall and 13 feet 11 inches by 20 feet 4 inches. The proposed material is either wood or composite. String lights will be mounted to the structure. Under the pergola, there will be a grill or a countertop with a built-in bench, and behind the bench, there will be a synthetic timber solid fence on which they'll mount a TV. Under the pergola, there'll also be a curved bar counter. Both corners will be clad in brick veneer with granite countertops, and in the right half of the site, the applicant proposes to install synthetic turf, including a putting green. Small lights and bollards at grade will also be installed throughout the site. Staff's analysis of the site modifications finds that the proposal is consistent with the overall character of the Gateway District character area, which has seen significant redevelopment over time, and especially within the last several decades. The proposed materials are contemporary. The existing 6-foot-tall vinyl fence will block most of the alterations from view from the public right-of-way. Although 5 trees will be removed, they can be replaced with 7 new trees, or they will be replaced with 7 new trees. This property is located in the DT1 Downtown Center zoning district, which does not limit impervious surface coverage, including the use of synthetic turf. And as you can see from this photo, the site is currently comprised of dry dirt. It's possible that the shade cover from the existing trees has prevented the grass from growing successfully here. Excuse me. The applicant seeks to use synthetic turf for easier maintenance and for use as an activity area by the residents, and as I mentioned previously, to include a putting green. It comprises a relatively small area of the overall parcel and will be concealed from public view due to the existing fence. And in this instance, staff considers the use of synthetic turf to be appropriate for a non-contributing resource and a generally non-contributing and mixed-use portion of the historic district that is also concealed from view. Therefore, staff recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings and approve the certificate of appropriateness for site improvements and exterior alterations to the first story of the property located at 115 2nd Avenue South in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District, subject to the following conditions. 1, the HVAC condensing units and metal fences surrounding the patio shall be mounted to the brick wall through the mortar joints to avoid damage to the masonry walls. And 2, in addition, the other 2 standard condition of approvals that the HPC includes. This concludes my presentation on behalf of Erin Kay, and I'm happy to stay for questions. And I think I think the applicant is available. Yes. yes, if they would like to come up and say a few words or give a presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Commissioners, are there questions for staff? Go ahead.
Sorry. I guess my question is to item 1 in terms of fastening the condensing unit's metal fence through the mortar joints. The mortar joints looked rather tight, and my question is that a reasonable expectation to preserve the brick?
Thank you, Commissioner Carato. You know, we often on our team suggest that for projects. Now, notably, it is more important for historic masonry to go through the mortar joints. On a non-contributing building, generally, we recommend that as well, just to prevent damage to masonry, totally understanding it's non-contributing, but to prevent water infiltration. In this case, I believe Aaron and the team felt that it was a reasonable request to put on these mortar joints, but you are more than welcome to pose that question to the applicant.
Yeah, my concern is that if the mortar joint's tight enough and the fastener is wide enough to drill through it, it's almost inevitable that the brick gets damaged. And so is
Sure.
it worth the effort, or is it, can you replace that brick with a shorter brick to have a wider joint to penetrate through would be my question.
Sure. I mean, I think, Commissioner Corrado, it depends on the installation of the bolt that needs to go through to hold it up, and I don't have those details with me, but the applicant may know more.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing for this item. Is the applicant here? Would you like to speak? Or perhaps answer the question that we have? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Fabrizio Montermini. Personal address or business address?
Business address is
Okay,
fine.
it's 5215 Edina Industrial Boulevard in Edina, Minnesota.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, but I don't think I can answer your question either. It's a little bit of a technical construction one. Certainly happy to reach out to our contractor and provide that detail, but I personally don't know the answer to it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Are there other questions for the applicant? Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us while we're on
No,
here?
I think Aaron did a great job with the presentation, and I don't have anything to add other than we've owned the property since soon after it was built. We've been property owner and property management company in the city for many years, and unfortunately our Montessori they retired, and they'd been there for many years, and we're excited to potentially add some more amenities and units to the building. So.
Thank you for those comments. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicants while we have them here? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. Any concerns or comments? Or if anyone would like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Booty seconds.
I think we have to officially have as part of that, Commissioner Carroll, to approve their certificate of appropriateness. We can't just approve the report.
So I will try again.
Yeah, look at the recommended motions.
Okay. The recommended motion is the Heritage Preservation Commission approve the certificate of appropriateness for site improvements and exterior alterations to the first story of the property located at 115 2nd Avenue South in the St. Anthony Falls Historic District, subject to the following conditions. Do I need to read those as well?
You can simply say they're as written in the,
As
written.
As written. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Howard.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Booty seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. If we could call the roll. Thank you.
Commissioner Booty,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Hare,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Carato,
Aye.
Maston,
Aye.
Melblom,
Aye.
Merrill.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. All right, we'll move on to item number 5, 615 3rd Street North, Ward 3. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness. The staff report is presented by Rob Skalecki.
Thank you, Chair Howard, and good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Rob Skalecki. I'm a senior city planner in the Historic Preservation section of Planning in CPED. Today I'm presenting a certificate of appropriateness for the property located at 615 3rd Street North. The subject property was constructed in 1925 as the Chevrolet Warehouse. The building was designed by master architects Magny and Tussler, led by the designer Leon Eugene Arnold. The property was built as a brick and stone 2-story office, storage, and manufacturing facility that includes a basement and a half-story exposed at ground level. The building served as the Northwest Division headquarters of the factory branch of the Chevrolet Motor Company from its completion in 1925 until November 1929. The Olds Motor Works Company, another subsidiary of General Motors, took over the location as a wholesale branch in December 1929. The property is a contributing resource in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District. The subject property retains good historic integrity. The building has a flat roof and is clad in brick and stone with minor geometric masonry details and pilasters inspired by Art Deco motifs of the time. Aside from a window and door replacement project that took place in the 1980s, there is little evidence to suggest that the building has lost much of its historic materials. The public right-of-way to the west side of the building retains a noteworthy section of the property's historic loading dock. Staff have been in contact with the project architects and applicant team since 2023 to discuss the project and give feedback on proposed plans. Historic drawings, as you may have seen in the attachments, were obtained from the University of Minnesota's Northwest Architectural Archives, and available historic photos like the previous one I showed and the one here on the right have been used to be able to help develop the scope of work and understand what at the property is historic. Staff did receive a letter of support from the North Loop Neighborhood Association for the project. The applicant is proposing multiple exterior alterations to the building, which include the following: construction of a rear or south elevation overhead entry door to allow for vehicle parking access to the basement level of the building. The opening will be cut into existing cream brick to make a rectangular opening about 7 feet 8 inches tall and 12 feet 4 inches wide. The new door will be metal, and the vehicle entry will be sheltered by an aluminum canopy installed into the building through mortar joints. Construction of a rooftop penthouse will also take place, and this will be clad in metal siding to allow for additional stair access to the rooftop. The penthouse will be set back from the nearest primary elevation, which is the north elevation, more than one structural bay. The applicant included a sightline visibility study, which you probably saw in the attachments, to show that the planned approximate 11-foot tall structure will be minimally visible from public areas. New mechanical units will also be placed on the roof, and these will also not be visible. Installation of a new glazed storefront system will replace all glazed storefront systems at the building, and those existing glazed storefront systems on the north, which is the front, and the west, which is the side elevation, are non-historic. New systems replacing these will include finished metal framing and mullions. Repair of the historic primary elevation loading dock on the west, again, the side elevation, using concrete patching will take place. A new platform of poured concrete, which is approximately 19 and a half feet long and about 7 and a half feet wide, with new metal railings, and is proposed for that front entry dock. The new platform with railings will also act as a private tenant space for the new tenant. Additional work does include installation of a contemporary metal lighting in various locations, which you can see on the drawings. In-kind replacement of deteriorated corrugated metal canopy over the loading dock on the west, which is the side elevation. So the metal features of this canopy do appear to be historic based on the available evidence we have. And the canopy is supported by steel brackets currently, and the new one will be installed into the building through mortar joints and will have the same design as the existing one, which is believed to be historic. Removal of a non-historic overhead door to the south end of the west, which is the side elevation, will also be completed, and a contemporary metal glazed storefront system will be placed there, recessed into the opening to allow for outswing doors. The construction of a new side elevation canopy over that entry will also be completed with 2 cable anchors installed into mortar joints. Infilled window openings on the rear, which is the south elevation, will be expanded with new windows added in 2 locations on the first story. One section of historic infill openings will retain its present opening shape, and then the other 2 sections will actually be dropped a bit to have larger openings. The existing loading dock here on the south elevation, staff would like to note, is non-historic, and the applicant will be removing that as part of the project as well. And then overall, there's masonry rehabilitation that's planned throughout the building, which is rather common for this type of scope of work. And the applicant has visually identified deteriorated mortar, stone, and brick in different locations that need to be either repaired or replaced. And the last item that staff would like to mention is that there are select landscape features that are being planned at the alley elevation. The Department of Community Planning and Economic Development has analyzed the application to add a vehicular entrance, construct a rooftop addition, and rehabilitate the property located at 615 3rd Street North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District based on the findings for a certificate of appropriateness. And I will, in this presentation, just focus on the findings for meeting the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. And I can take questions based on other findings if commissioners have them. So as conditioned by staff, the proposed alterations for the project meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. Generally, a large-scale alteration with the goal of changing significant portions of the building, of this building in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District into parking would not be appropriate per the standards. However, the applicant's proposal to create a new opening at the rear elevation to allow for basement-level parking is keeping in character of the building's historic use as the Chevrolet Warehouse and later the Olds Motor Company building. Historic drawings, which you can see here, detail a robust steel support system, not on this drawing specifically, but within those drawings, and floor plans that are shown to be suited for automobile storage. And then there is a section from the Minneapolis Morning Tribune in 1929 that does clearly state that automobiles were historically stored in that basement level. So staff believes that the project to change that lower level into parking does meet standard 1. The applicant is also proposing to retain distinctive features of the property as part of the rehabilitation, notably the masonry and the building's historic loading dock. So that meets standards 2 and 5 by minimally altering the property. The applicant is proposing to replace the historic metal canopy over the loading dock on the west, which is the side elevation, and the applicant has shown that this canopy is deteriorated beyond repair to a point that replacement can be considered. An in-kind replacement is proposed to match the materials and design of that historic canopy, which meets standard 6. Staff have conditioned that the proposed new canopies on the west, again the side elevation, and the south, which is the rear elevation, be differentiated from the historic metal canopy and not be corrugated metal in order to meet standard 9. Storefronts will be contemporary and compatible, which adheres to the district's design guidelines, and that meets standard 9 as well. The new rooftop penthouse will not be visible from street level and will be easily identifiable as new construction. So as conditioned by staff, the proposal to add that, along with things like the metal platform on the loading dock, do meet Standard 9 and Standard 10 with staff conditions. So these parts of the project, the penthouse and the loading dock addition, will allow the project to be completed in a way that allows for reversibility in the future without damaging historic character-defining features of the building as conditioned by staff. Just a few photos here for reference, just the rear south elevation and the west side elevation that shows the area where the new opening will be placed in the rear elevation, as well as the rehabilitation work that will take place on that historic loading dock right there on the west. Just additional drawings here to detail the repairs planned for the loading dock, as well as to show the canopy location. And additional drawings to show how the new canopies will be installed into the building at the two locations that staff mentioned. And here's some deterioration that shows what the applicant is noting for masonry repairs that are needed, as well as the historic corrugated metal overhead canopy there. You can see deterioration on the right. And the last photos here, just to show the visibility study that the applicant submitted to show that the new penthouse for the stairway on the rooftop is not going to be visible from the public right-of-way. So this is what they constructed to show that. And again, just another photo there of the historic loading dock and canopy. So with that, staff, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the application by David Frank for the property located at 615 3rd Street North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District, and recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission approves the certificate of appropriateness to add a vehicular entrance, construct a rooftop addition, and rehabilitate the property located at 615 3rd Street North, subject to the following conditions. 1, all new metal elements, including railings, canopies, fenestration, and siding, shall be painted or finished in an opaque coating. Shiny or metallic surfaces shall not be used. 2, the new canopy replacing the historic canopy over the west side elevation loading dock shall match the design of the existing. 3, new canopies planned for the west side elevation's new storefront entry at the elevator tower and the south elevation shall not use corrugated metal. The design shall be a flat metal finish to differentiate these canopies from the historic canopy design. 4, the proposed platform on the historic loading dock on the west elevation shall be metal to minimize impact on the historic concrete loading dock. 5, sills for expanded openings on the rear, which is the south elevation, shall not use a row-lock course to differentiate from the historic openings. Brick sills shall be a common running bond. 6, artificial turf shall not be installed. And 7 and 8 are standard conditions of approval for a certificate of appropriateness. And with that, I'm available to take any questions as staff, but I do understand that the applicant and the applicant team members are here to answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. I'll open it up to questions for staff. Commissioner Carato.
Thank you. My question is, I guess, regarding number 6, the artificial turf. It's my understanding from reading the plans that is on the secondary elevations. Is that correct?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Corrado, that is correct. That is going to be at the rear elevation by the alley.
Has there been any conversation about what might replace the artificial turf given its proposed function as a pet relief area?
Not at this point. I understand the applicant was in agreement with that condition, and at that point, generally the applicant would work with staff at a later time to consider an appropriate change to that plan.
Okay. I guess my concern was it being a pet relief area, artificial turf seemed reasonable, and that because it was not on the primary elevations, to me it seemed like a reasonable concession in terms of, it's not a material that was available historically, but the function of that space was also not something that was around historically. So to me, I felt like that may not be a needed concession, but if the applicant's more than happy, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carato. Are there other questions for staff? Commissioner Merrill, did you have a question? No? Okay. All right, thank you. I will now open the public hearing for this item. I understand the applicant is here. Would you like to speak? Just be sure to state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is David Frank, representing the applicant team. And Madam Chair and Commissioner, to your question, we are supportive of staff's condition that artificial turf will not be used. And to answer your follow-up question, we will use some regular grass, if you will, in a kind that's acceptable to staff. After we hopefully are approved tonight, we'll figure out exactly what kind going forward.
Thank you for those comments. Are there additional questions?
Nope.
Okay. Other questions from other commissioners? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. You feel comfortable with it?
Yeah, I guess my primary concern with pet relief areas is that over time the soil chemistry changes. And so it's often hard to keep plant material alive. So when it's a planted material, it's maintenance. But if the owners are more than happy with their maintenance, then that's great.
Are there any other concerns, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'm going to try this again. I move that the Heritage Preservation Commission approve a certificate of appropriateness to add a vehicular entrance, construct a rooftop addition, and rehabilitate the property located at 615 3rd Street North in the Minneapolis Warehouse Historic District, subject to the following conditions as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Is there a second?
Melblom seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Commissioner Booty.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Hare.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Carato.
Aye.
Maston.
Aye.
Melblom.
Aye.
Merrill.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you. That motion passes. We will move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is the Glendale Townhomes potential district with numerous addresses on Delaware Street Southeast, Essex Street Southeast, St. Mary's Avenue Southeast, St. Mary's Place, 27th Avenue Southeast, and Williams Avenue Southeast. This application is for nomination for a historic district, and the staff report is presented by Rob Skalecki.
Thank you, Chair Howard, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Rob Skalecki, Senior City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of Planning. And today I'm presenting a nomination for the potential Glendale Townhouses Historic District. And just one note here, the correct plan number, application number is listed here on the presentation. I believe in the agenda it may have been a different one. Glendale Townhomes is a multifamily housing complex consisting of 28 buildings on 13 acres of land in the Prospect Park neighborhood. The Minneapolis Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which later became the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, or MPHA, hired local architecture firm Larson & McLaren to design the complex with landscape architect Hugh Vincent Frean, who designed the landscape plan. Constructed at the edge of Prospect Park, the project was known as Glendale Townhouses, and it was designed to follow the character of Prospect Park with curvilinear streets, sidewalks, grass boulevards, all while the properties were designed with large lawns, green spaces, and playgrounds between these buildings. The buildings are relatively uniform, between 1 to 2 stories, and feature 6 different floor plans with 1 to 4 bedrooms. Rectangular in plan with a front portico. The exteriors retain their original brick veneer cladding on the first floor, but composite siding and on the second floor, which was added in 1989, has replaced the original cement asbestos siding. The buildings originally had flat roofs with flat roof porticos, but those were replaced with hip roofs and gable roofs for the porticos in 1972 and 1989 respectively. So windows were also replaced on all buildings, but the historic openings do remain. Robin Wansley, City Council Member for Ward 2, has submitted a nomination for the Glendale Townhouses Potential Historic District for consideration as a local historic district. The district was previously nominated by Cam Gordon, former council member of Ward 2. The past nomination was approved by the Minneapolis Heritage Preservation Commission at their April 9th, 2019 meeting. The district was placed under interim protection, and a designation study was completed on December 6th, 2019. The Glendale Townhouses designation study, which was included as an attachment to the staff report, concluded the district was not eligible for local landmark consideration due to a loss of historic integrity. City staff recommended that the designation be denied. Notwithstanding staff recommendation, the HPC voted to approve the designation at their March 3rd, 2020 meeting. The designation resolution was scheduled for the Business Inspections Housing and Zoning Committee, also known by the acronym BIZ, of City Council on June 22nd, 2021. BIZ voted to continue the item to the July 13th, 2021 meeting. The item stayed on the BIZ agenda and was postponed each meeting, totaling 10 meeting agendas, up until November 30th, 2021. BIZ then voted to delete the item from the agenda at this meeting. The Business Inspections Housing and Zoning recommendation then went to Minneapolis City Council on December 10th, 2021, and the resolution was formally deleted from the City Council agenda. No vote to approve or deny the designation resolution was ever passed by members of City Council. Given the situation, another nomination must be submitted if a different council member wanted to nominate the same district that was nominated, not acted upon by a former council member or council. The council member who nominated the district and the council member who was chair of Business Inspections, Housing, and Zoning in 2020 and 2021 are no longer serving on Minneapolis City Council. The potential historic district was assessed for National Register of Historic Places significance by the Minnesota State Historic Preservation Office in 2015 in response to a proactive approach by the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority to evaluate the property in anticipation of a federally funded project, which would trigger the Section 106 environmental review process. The State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, determined that the property lacked sufficient integrity to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places at that time. Staff did receive public comments on the nomination application from representatives of the Defend Glendale Group, and these are included for HPC commissioners in the packet that was sent ahead of the meeting for your review and consideration. Per Section 599-230 of the Heritage Preservation Regulations, the Heritage Preservation Commission shall review all complete nomination applications. If the Heritage Preservation Commission determines that a nominated property or property appears to meet at least one of the criteria for designation contained in that section, the Commission may institute interim protection and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study of the property. Staff mentioned a designation study was prepared for this following the previous nomination. The designation study determined that the nominated district appears to meet at least one of the 7 criteria for designation contained in Section 599-210. However, the designation study concluded that the district lacks historic integrity to be considered for district status. The designation found that the potential district had significance under 2 of the local designation criteria, and that's criterion 1 for a property associated with significant events or periods that exemplify broad patterns of cultural, political, economic, or social history. And criteria number 5, which is the property exemplifies a landscape design or development pattern distinguished by innovation, rarity, uniqueness, or quality of design or detail. To be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, and similarly for local historic district status, a property or district must have 2 things: significance and integrity. The Glenwood Townhouses Potential Historic District demonstrates potential significance under local criteria. However, the integrity of the complex has been diminished and the building exteriors to a degree that may compromise its ability to convey its significance. Alterations include a new roof design from the flat roof to a hip roof, new upper story cladding to a composite material that replaces the former asbestos siding, entirely new porticos with a gabled roof and rectangular metal posts replacing the flat roof porticos with paneled concrete sidewalls and metal round posts, which you can see in this photo comparison here, and replacement windows in the same sized openings. The site plan and arrangement of the townhouses is intact, along with the green spaces and playground areas. The designation study was submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office for their comment on December 6th, 2019. In a letter dated February 5th, 2020, the State Historic Preservation Office provided comments in agreement with the staff recommendation to not designate the Glendale Townhouses Historic District. On February 27th, 2020, CPED staff presented the Glendale Townhouses Historic District designation study to the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole at their meeting for comments. Planning Commission commented that they agreed with that the historic district had compromised integrity as a historic resource, and also noted that the complex indeed had a noteworthy significance, but were wondering, how do you preserve this importance given that the complex was built in the early 50s but was heavily changed in the 70s and 80s. The City Planning Commission also commented that the supply of affordable housing could be maintained at this location. In all, City Planning Commission agreed with the staff recommendation to not designate the Glendale Townhouses Historic District. Minneapolis City Council did not choose to designate Glendale Townhouses as a historic district in 2020 or 2021. City Council voted to delete the item from the City Council agenda. At the March 3rd, 2020 HPC meeting, City staff recommended denying the designation of the historic district due to loss of historic integrity. Both City Planning Commission and the State Historic Preservation Office concurred with the designation study findings that Glendale Townhouses Historic District is not eligible for local designation. No new evidence has been presented to allow city staff to challenge the previous findings that were published in the Glendale Townhouses designation study. Staff's recommendation to deny the district nomination is consistent with past recommendations to deny the designation of the district. With that, the Department of Community Planning and Economic Development recommends that the Heritage Preservation Commission adopt staff findings for the nomination by Councilmember Robin Wansley of Ward 2 for the designation of Glendale Townhouses as a historic district, and recommend that the Heritage Preservation Commission denies the Glendale Townhouses as a historic district. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions as staff, but I do believe that Councilmember Wansley or staff members of Ward 2 are here, and also property representatives from the ownership of the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority are here as well, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. I'll open it up to questions for staff. Commissioners? Commissioner Corrado.
My question is, there's, in the application, it not seemed that the architecture of the individual buildings was considered to be part of its significance. And then in the conclusions, it seems like the lack of integrity is more based on the architectural changes. Is that correct?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Corrado, that is correct. So in order to have that cohesive district that is eligible, you do need to have historic integrity. And we understand that there are different histories and different areas of significance when considering different historic districts. But staff, and also through the previous designation study, are aware that a lot has been changed to a point that historic district status is not, the best tool for this district for preservation. So just given all the changes, understanding what has occurred to the buildings, that's where staff's recommendation is.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Booty?
Thank you. My question was about in the designation report, I noticed that they recommended under criterion 1 and 5, but then in the staff report, 3 was also added, and I was wondering why that was also added in addition to the designation report.
Thank you, Chair Howard and Commissioner Booty. I'm not aware that we had added that. I believe that it had been written to highlight 1 and 5. I will see if staff member Andrea Burke has any comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Booby. I also don't recall that being the staff report, but I'm not going to disagree, so I'm going to try to pull it up at the moment and check on the staff report. Just a moment.
While she's doing that, could I ask if you are aware of any changes that have taken place within the property since it was designated? Or since we looked at the last designation study, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Howard. I'm not aware of any changes. I will, see if the property owner would want to add to that question too, if
Okay.
they would like to speak.
Thanks.
And just checking, Commissioners, checking here in the staff report, it does look like staff noted that the historic district is not significant under criterion 3.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Howard. Yes, I echo Rob's comment. It does state that it is not eligible under criterion 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff? Commissioner Merrill? Microphone.
Yes, I don't know. I'm not sure whether this is a question for staff. It's just a general question, follow-up to Commissioner Carrara's comment. It seems to me that if the integrity of this project is relying just on the architecture, in reading the Hess-Royce report, there seem to be very persuasive arguments for the integrity. So I guess my question really is, and my comment is, and I'm brand new to this body, still learning Robert's rules. My question is, why could we not consider this project for its importance, its social, cultural importance, and to have it take its place in the history of the neighborhood, rather than focus on the integrity as it relates just to the architecture?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Merrill, that's a good question. I think a similar conversation kind of arose when this last came through for nomination and designation through the Heritage Preservation Commission process, at least through HPC's conversation. When we are looking at local historic district designation, the city's preservation ordinance, is kind of formed to preserve architecture in a way. So we understand that it is one tool for preservation, but the way that, the ordinance is written and how we review changes to properties more relates to a building's architecture and its design. So we understand that for certain properties, there can be considerations for social histories, but when we're talking about a collection of a lot of properties and what effect that may have on that, and then considering as staff, what's the next step to writing design guidelines for that? How do we look at basically the protections that come with designation status for this district? And that's where, things can get a bit difficult, and that's where we understand too that integrity is important for local district designation.
Any other questions for staff? Go ahead, Commissioner Hare.
My question would be, do we have any idea when the grading around the buildings was changed? As I see in this picture here, it looks like there used to be a concrete walk, a sloped walk with one riser, and then into the unit. And on the left of the current photo, it looks like grading was changed to add window wells and potentially openings to the lower level.
Chair Howard, Commissioner Hare, that's a great question. And I'll admit, we are basing this being the same property off of Hennepin County Library's info. There may have been an issue there with addressing that. So this is what, I think that's a good question for the property owner if they're aware, but we're not aware of when that may have happened. At least I'm not recalling based on the designation study.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, I want to follow up on Commissioner Hare's questions because I think it leads to if Mr. Skolecki, does the image on the right represent in general what the buildings looked like initially, let's say 1972 or before, and the image on the left represents typically what they look like now? Is that correct?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Melblom, that is correct. And that's the kind of comparison that staff was trying to make with these two visuals, just to kind of focus on the changes that have been made.
So then is it correct to say that the changes are the porticos over the entry doors, the roof structure, as well as the support pillars, the concrete block that was removed, the windows, even though you have the same overall opening, on the left you show a set of 3 large windows, and on the right you show 4 smaller windows with a salad piece in the middle. And then at the top on the second floor, you show on the right 2 windows that have a trim piece between them, and then further to the right in that image, you show 2 sets of 2 windows that have a decorative piece in the middle, and all of that's gone on the left. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is throughout because of the similarity of designs. That is correct.
Thank you. That's where I was going to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Last call for questions for staff. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, in terms of the siding and that having to do with the integrity of the building, because the siding was asbestos, from a human health standpoint, that would need to be replaced. And so wondering how that fit into your consideration for whether these buildings had the integrity that would qualify them for designation, and if that was a significant piece in decision-making.
Yeah. Chair Howard, Commissioner Fisher, thank you. I think it's kind of in total, the design changes, as the designation study's written, I think a lot of concern was based on the roof shapes being changed. But when we put together kind of the total amount of changes, that's where the determination that this has lost too much integrity to be considered for local historic district status came in. I'm sure if it might have been just one of those things or something else, there would have been a different discussion about that integrity. But as it was kind of evaluated in the designation study and throughout the process, it's just understanding all the changes that have taken place throughout this area's history. So,
thank you.
Okay, now one last call for questions. I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Mr. Skolecki. I will now open the public hearing for this item, and I understand Councilmember Wansley is here and would like to speak. Be sure to state your name and address for the record. I have to say it for all applicants.
Thank you. I am Councilmember Robin Wansley. I represent Ward 2, where Glendale Townhomes is located. I do believe I have an exception on the address piece because of a bomb threat that happened before. But so I will follow. Yes, I will follow up. But I live here. Yes, I assure you that. So, members of HPC and members of the community, thank you so much for this hearing today. I am proud to have nominated Glendale Townhomes for historic designation and hopeful that today you will vote in favor of the nomination. The application that I submitted builds upon the work led by my former predecessor, former Councilmember Cam Gordon, and it goes in depth on the history of Glendale and the reasons that the nomination should be approved. So for today's meeting, though, I would just briefly share the significance of Glendale's history to its residents, the Prospect Park neighborhood, and to the city. Glendale is a treasured gem within the Prospect Park neighborhood and greater Minneapolis community. Residents and neighbors hold a deep pride in the fact that Ward 2 is home to the oldest public housing development in the city. The architectural and layout of Glendale is unique in the city and holds so much history from the planning process that the brand new Housing and Redevelopment Authority went through in the late 1940s to the opening of Glendale in 1952 to the present moment. The creation of Glendale was made possible by our own Vice President, Hubert Humphrey, who was a strident supporter of public housing in this particular development at a time where this idea and even the development itself faced so much opposition. And this is just one of many important people and historic moments that have intersected with Glendale's history. So Glendale Townhome holds over 70 years of our city's history, and residents see and appreciate that. The deep appreciation has also yielded several partnerships and efforts that have served to preserve and enhance Glendale's existence. Just last year, Glendale residents, as well as University of Minnesota leaders and students, hosted a widely attended Glendale Townhome 70th anniversary exhibit and events, which provided a rich qualitative overview of the housing's projects, historical significance, and also it won an award from the Minnesota Alliance of Local History Museums. Former Councilmember Gordon nominated Glendale for historic nomination in 2019. And in 2020, as staff mentioned, city staff recommended against it, but the HPC voted to recommend the designation to City Council. The council never moved forward with a vote on whether to approve or deny the designation. In this way, the entire process was never completed, and Glendale never got the fair chance to have historic designation voted on by the council. And since then, my constituents, my residents of Glendale and the neighborhood surrounding it have asked for that fair chance. And today I am hopeful that the HPC will follow the precedent set by the previous decision made by the prior HPC around this and support a historic designation for Glendale Townhomes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those comments. Commissioners, just in case, are there any questions for Councilmember Wansley? Commissioner Mulblum.
Yeah. Councilmember, I don't know if you can answer this, and you probably can't, but do you know why the city council never took up the issue? Why they kind of kept punting on it?
So from my understanding, and clerks, please let me know if I'm speaking out of bounds, but I do think it was one of those situations where elections were nearing. And that took into consideration, at least from my predecessor, if they wanted to move forward at that time. But it wasn't, I know for sure in consulting with them, with residents, because there was any lack of confidence in, the decision to move forward with it. But I do think it was time to run the elections.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I think my question, in reading through all the information, I know that we're probably going to hear some information from the Public Housing Authority asking that we do not recognize. So respectfully, can you explain to us what benefit you would see as having us protect Glendale townhomes?
So as reiterated in the application, this is coming from dozens and dozens of residents of Glendale themselves and surrounding Prospect Park neighbors who recognize the significance of this project as talked about extensively throughout the application, and wanting to honor the social and cultural impact of this institution. It is an institution, and university partners, so many stakeholders have also understood that, and they want that to be reflected in a formal decision around a historic designation. So I think it's really about protecting that cultural and social integrity and history, but also as indicated in the application, there are components of the uniqueness in the architecture where we don't see that relevant in public housing production even now, where, it's great to see with our comp plan that we do have public housing that looks a bit different and modern, but I hear all the time how public housing residents wish they had options like townhomes, which I think right now Glendale is one of the very few. So even recognizing that, the diversity of public housing options that Glendale represented as like a new president, even back in the 1950s, how that even fits within our context of how we're evaluating public housing and its architectural design even today, and the type of diversity that public housing residents want themselves. So I think there's that piece, and also, honestly, the concern, I know MPHA is going to oppose this, but we've had lots of conversations, someone who is championing investments into our public housing authority overall in public housing, the idea that should we be looking to convert these townhomes into multi-unit housings and things of that nature. And people are nervous about how, again, that's going to disrupt the architectural uniqueness of that particular public housing portfolio, but alongside just the social and cultural history too. So all those components are really taken into consideration where my residents have said this needs to come up for a vote.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Councilmember Wansley? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for coming today.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? I don't have a list of people in front of me, and I've lost Ken. We'll just... if you could just hold on just a second. Hi, Ken. Are you willing to run the timer for me? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So we'll be limiting our comments to 2 minutes, and typically I go in order of the list. Do you have that list? I get the feeling Ken's doing 5 different jobs tonight. Thank you. All right, we'll go in order. I have Edward Barber first. Go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Edward Barber, address 2109 Oak Park Avenue North. Council, thank you for letting me speak. I'm a direct product from Glendale. Grew up there as a kid. My mother had 5 children. 2 girls, 3 boys. We all grew up in Glendale. My mother, Ruby Barber, was council president of Glendale and also on the board. I brought her down to this building here many, many times for public housing meetings, growing up as a kid. She was a public housing activist for at least 35 years before her death. Throughout the leadership of the Glendale Resident Council and the council, they achieved many goals. Here's a short list of some of the goals. When I was growing up, there was a teen center at 58 St. Mary's for the teens in that neighborhood, okay, in the Glendale neighborhood. The Resident Council got a program, it was called NYC, which was Neighborhood Youth Corps, and that allowed the teens to get jobs during when school was out for summer vacations. I was 13, 14. My first job, I worked for the public housing. I assisted the painters and the carpenters. They also have gotten a co-op food store and a food shelf. When I was a kid, they had, which we really didn't like, they had vaccines. They had the vaccines come, and kids, we got our shots. They improved the playground area, the resident council. They improved the playground area. Oh, wow.
Just a couple more seconds if you want to finish your thoughts.
They brought the Boys and Girl Scouts. I was a Boy Scout, Girl Scouts. They brought the 4-H club. Also, in the late 60s and 70s, Clyde and Vernon Belcourt, Dennis Banks, and George Mitchell were leaders of the American Indian movement, which held house meetings there at 70 St. Mary's. Also, Matt Eubanks.
I'm going to have to cut you off, I'm afraid, because we have 2 minutes. Thank you so much for sharing your story here, though.
Okay, thank you.
LaDon Youssef.
Can I give him another minute of my time, and then I'll be quick? Is that okay?
There's bartering for time. Sure. We'll do it that way.
I'll be 30 seconds.
Also, in that same period, Mr. Hayden, Mr. Eubanks, and Miss Westbury, they founded the Minnesota chapters of the Black Panther Party. I met many public figures who would come to my house to meet with my mother when I was a kid, different city council members, board members. Also out of there, from growing up in Glendale, people who lived there, Big Ray Parson went on and played professional football. Teddy Russell went on and became a professional wrestler with Vern Gagne on Championship Wrestling. Ray Stevens, Sandy Stevens, Vern Winfield, Ray Whitlow, they all became professional athletes, and they all came out of Glendale. Dickie Kelly, who worked for the city here, came out of Glendale. Charles Sims, who went on to be Dr. Sims, a dentist, came out of Glendale. His son right now, Jericho Sims, plays with the New York Knickerbockers, came out of Glendale. Oliver Shannon, who was drafted by the Boston Celtics, came out of Glendale.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. I appreciate that. LaDon Youssef, name and address for the record.
Hi, I'll be real quick.
And I think we have 43 seconds left.
Okay, so my name is LaDon Youssef. I'm the co-founder of Defend Glendale and Public Housing Coalition. We've been through a lot trying to get this historic designation passed throughout the city. The significance of what Glendale means to us has been written about, has been talked about, and I think some of you were here. So I do thank you for those of you that voted to preserve Glendale. And I just want to say about MPHA, to us, MPHA is a part of the city because Glendale is Section 9 public housing, and they do come under the city, even though they would like to move like a private landlord, they have public ownership. And the public ownership, I don't know if someone said the asbestos, I just need to correct them. One of the staff, there is no asbestos in Glendale. That has been cleared like decades ago. So anyway, thank you. We hope that you approve the application.
Thank you very much for those comments. I have Jeraine Cuff next. Name and address for the record.
Sure, my name is Jeraine Cuff. My address is 5716 36th Avenue North in Crystal, Minnesota. And thank you so much for having us here. And I do want to make a comment about Glendale. So Edward is my cousin. His mother, Ruby, is my aunt. But she's affectionately my cousin, but we called her aunt because culturally that's what we did. So I wrote, my Aunt Ruby got elected to so many positions at Glendale. So there was a food shelf that she created and other family members there, and a daycare. So please look at our exhibit. I'm sure that Ladan can get the exhibit for you. It was a very cultured, descriptive exhibit. We had a nice celebration last year. So, just the preservation of Glendale means a lot to the community. And the young people that are there today, I'm sure, could bring valuable ideas going forward for your vote. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Have
for
a
those
good night.
comments. Next on my list is Joseph Ring.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Joseph Ring. I live at 101 Melbourne Avenue Southeast, Minneapolis, Prospect Park. I'd like to draw issue, though, with one thing that I've heard here, is that Glendale is part of Prospect Park. So when you say Prospect Park, for us, it includes Glendale. So I just want to make that clarification. That came about because of when Prospect Park asked for public housing, the very first community to ask for public housing in it, and actually the only one who ever asked for it. So just make that sure you understand. So we're kind of sensitive about that. The term Glendale comes from Councilman Glenn and Councilman Dale. They were the two individuals who spearheaded the Glendale project. And it was also supported by Hubert Humphrey, which you heard about. When Glendale was finished and they were having the opening ceremony, Senator Humphrey came from Washington specifically to be there to participate with Councilman Glenn and Dale to turn the first shovel. That's how important it was for him. The other issue is the difference in developmental between the two entities within Prospect Park. In our NRP plan, we designated funding to do an assessment for historic assets. It was determined that Glendale could not be included with Prospect Park because the developmental patterns were so, time difference so much greater. So Prospect Park was done, nationally designated as a historic district. It's the biggest one in the state. It's one of the largest ones in the country by data and by contributing properties. Glendale.
Thank you for those comments. Last on my list is Brian Schefter. Oh, sorry. If you can wait just a moment. Go ahead.
Secretary Howard, Brian Schaefer is representing the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. I think they were going to speak after Councilmember Walmsley, but I will let it up to you as to the length of time they get to speak. They are the property owner. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Typically, we just do the applicant, so I was unaware of that. Sorry about that. So you get to close.
Chair Howard, would you
Go ahead.
allow me to speak longer than 2 minutes?
I'll allow you to speak longer, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for that oversight.
Oh, I appreciate the extra time. Chair Howard, Commissioners, my name is Brian Schaefer. I'm speaking on behalf of MPHA, Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. Our office address is 1001 Washington Avenue North in Minneapolis. A little bit before I get into it, just a little bit about my background. I spent 6 years now at the Public Housing Authority, but I spent the 12 years before that at the City of Minneapolis and CPED. And actually, several of those years actually staffing this Preservation Commission. Not many of you were there at that point in time, but leading design writing nominations, writing designations, doing the research, doing CLG studies, writing design guidelines. Actually, the guidelines you had to review for the warehouse project you just had went through was something that I had worked on. So I had a lot of background in preservation, just to let you know a little bit about that as we go forward. As you noted, MPHA is not in favor of the designation or the nomination. We haven't been in the past, and we continue not to be going forward, and we respectfully ask you to follow staff recommendation and deny the nomination. MPHA really strongly believes in Glendale and the social history. You've heard heard testimony to that today, and there's a lot more out there. It's a story that needs to continue to live and needs to be continued to be told and amplified and honored. And we don't think designation is the right tool to honor that or honor the work that our leaders and their forethought had, including Vice President Humphreys and the council members Glenn and Dale. I won't belabor this, but you can see in the repetitive history. You've seen the long staff reports. I think what is interesting, and I think Commissioner Merrill and others were getting into as we started thinking through about how the property's changed a little bit, is that it went from not eligible back in the SHPO National Register nomination or assessment to, again, not eligible for local designation, again, not eligible for local designation both by CPED and SHPO. And then really what has kind of changed a little bit was in that HPC decision back in 2020. It was a 5-3 vote. And a lot of the things you were discussing today were same things that were wrestling then, especially as we start talking about the lack of historical integrity of the buildings, but also what is the development patterns that went around. So the conversation, both in that meeting and in the conversations that, in the nomination that came forward, is focused a little bit more on the development pattern. And I want to just dig into that. That's something new that hasn't been discussed a lot and really quite a focus. And I think, just to note that I think Glendale and the Prospect Park neighborhood probably have been studied more than from a historical perspective and done more work than probably even some areas of the Warehouse District or the St. Anthony Falls Historic District. There's been a lot of work done and led by the Prospect Park neighborhood. And again, work that, as was mentioned by staff, that was led at the desire of MPHA as it was considering some federal undertakings and needed to prepare for that. MPHA does not believe Glendale meets local designation criterion 5. Again, this focus on landscape came back. There was a lot of discussion in the staff reports, and a lot of the designation study and a lot of the root material all goes back to the Hess-Royce National Assessment by 2015. I'm sure you've read all that as they've gone through, but the nomination even talks about that Glendale took care to reproduce Prospect Park's curvilinear streets and irregular blocks. Really, this idea that this landscape of Glendale, this intentionality we see today, is a direct intentionality. And our argument is that isn't a direct intentionality, it's just a product of the time. Glendale, you can see here in this 1938 aerial photo, you can see the curve of the roads there. Glendale, those roads and that pattern existed then, back in 1938, before this project was ever considered. You can still see the road triangles that existed there and still exist today. There is a pattern of that in this project. The only street that was added was Delaware Street, which bisects the kind of the curved aspect here. And that Delaware Street, if you look back in the National Register assessment, really came from the building code requirements of the city of Minneapolis requiring street frontage. The original buildings did not have street frontage there, and they had to put a street through to make that work. Criterion 5 states that property exemplifies a landscape design or development pattern that's distinguished by innovation, rarity, or uniqueness, or a quality of design or detail. We attest that there was a lot of work and a lot of work in the assessment and others that have gone forward that has asserted this intentionality of the landscape, an intentionality of light and air, really the juxtaposition of the pre-World War I and post-World War, or pre-World War II and post-World War II development types, the idea of fresh air, light, sanitariness, a lot of things that came out of slum clearance, and the designation, the assessment that really is kind of the root of all this puts a lot of credence on that comparison and typology. It also goes back and looks at Sumner Field, some of the first affordable housing, deeply intentional projects that were done back in the WPA days in 1938. That was an original MPHA product or previous, predecessor. Again, that landscape designer, their intentionality, they worked on this project, but there is nothing in evidence in the designation study, the National Register assessment, or anything else that really talks about the intentionality of what was designed at Glendale. Our argument is that Glendale really is a pattern of its just context and time. It uses existing street patterns. The inclusion of the landscape designer, again, as I mentioned, doesn't have any clear designation back to what was done here, no intent on design or landscape. We'd argue that the postmodern, the mass post-war construction boom that was occurring at the time that Glendale was both being conceived and constructed had already been really driving this access to light and air, big open yards, big yard, small scale development. It was already kind of something that was in the ether. It wasn't something that was conceived of or delineated at Glendale. The National Register assessment even talks about building basements. These buildings have basements. And by the 1940s, and frankly, in a lot of areas in Minneapolis before that, basements were a very common practice. So again, carrying some of that vernacular forward into just common practice that was happening as well. And then I think, again, it continues to put all these previous developments and putting too much weight on that kind of comparison to slum clearance and some of the work that was done in the 1920s and 1930s and how Glendale was designed. Again, just a photo kind of comparing the 1938 photo on the left to the current photo now. You can see again, Glendale is a product of what was there, the constraints that existed, the streets that existed. They worked with the grades that existed. In my mind, as working in development now for the last 6 years, this is also a product of working with cost and working with what you have. And again, I don't see this as a product of rarity. We don't see this as a product of innovation as much as a product of just working with the land and space they have and trying to keep costs in check. I've noted why MPHA does not believe it meets criterion 5 of the designation, and there's been a lot spoken about criterion 1. Glendale is the first quote-unquote public housing complex built in Minneapolis in response to the housing shortage after World War II. No doubt on that. I would argue that it doesn't influence the designs and the work that MPHA or its predecessor had done, and as much as it's stated in the National Register assessment, and really serving as how it influenced future developments. We do not see that as a place where that happened. We also believe the historic integrity, especially as it relates to the buildings, is lost, and I think we can answer more questions as some of the commissioners said that when I'm done here. And then finally and ultimately, I think there is a better way we think there's a better way to preserve Glendale and the importance of it. We heard just from the testimony about the importance of what Glendale. Councilmember Wansley talked about the award that the residents of Defend Glendale, received for the local history work. This YouTube video is phenomenal that they put out there among many of the other works that they've done. So this is the kind of work that needs to be amplified and supported to tell the story. We don't believe designation, bricks and mortar, preserving a footprint or a building footprint is the way to tell the story of Glendale. So with that, I can answer any questions. I know there were a few earlier.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. It's appropriate to get questions from the owner or to the owner.
Secretary Howard, generally, yes.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions for the property owner? Commissioner Corrado.
I guess I'll ask the question I think others have brought up. Has there been significant grading changes since the original housing?
Chair Howard, Commissioner Corrado, I don't believe there has been significant grading changes. I think that probably, the staff, Staff Member Rob, was able, I would think they're trying to work through the same photograph. I don't know that is the same building, to be honest. I don't believe there were significant changes to the buildings. I know there was also a question about work that's gone on since then. In the more recent past, we've replaced roofs. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've been working on some roof replacements. We've actually had construction workers fall through the roofs because of the level of funding that we've been able to have to go through the properties. We've been going through, and there's been turns. Units get cleaned when they get vacated and new residents move in. We're also doing some soffit and fascia replacement right now. There's been everything from lead paint to other things that we were addressing that need to be addressed in that work as we've gone through. There's been a significant amount of lighting and security work done. Or security cameras and that came out of conversations with residents and property management, and they're now working on trip hazards, whether there are issues in our parking lots or other areas on the site that continue. So there's some site work that I think is down the road on that as well.
Any other questions for the owner? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. That's everyone on my list. Was there anyone else in the public who would like to speak for or against this? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, let's discuss. I believe I am the only one sitting up here who was part of the discussion the last time. Vice Chair Sandbolt was still on the commission then too, so the two of us would have been. I personally think it does have enough integrity and is extremely significant. So that's the short of it. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts. Commissioner Melblom.
Thank you. Interim chair, temporary chair, secretary.
Temporary, please.
I will admit that when I came into this, I was thinking that before I really read through everything in detail, I was thinking that the buildings have been ruined. I don't think that's an overstatement by the changes on the last decades. The more I think about it, though, in some ways, if we don't designate this because the buildings have been changed over time, we're neglecting the cultural history. And I will admit that reading the letter that Charlene Royce wrote on June 4th, 2021, that was included in the handout from the clerk today, I'm moved by her comment where she says in here, quote, "These biases devalue properties that have, like the people associated with them, experience different and sometimes difficult realities and express standards of beauty not conforming to, quote, mainstream, unquote, parameters. Similar biases are evident when it comes to assessing, quote, historic integrity," unquote. I feel that the cultural and social significance of these buildings outweigh the changes made to them over time because they do represent something significant that was put in place, first of all, on this piece of property. I would add to that I believe the group's called Defend Glendale, but that group was formed in reaction to the Public Housing Authority, and I think they put forward a very reasonable thing, kind of from the point of view of the Public Housing Authority, to try and address the issues, certainly accessibility issues within the existing buildings and the long-term maintenance issues. But because the Housing Authority had at one point moved to make these to kind of basically level, I don't know if that's completely 100% true, but to substantially change the character of the community, it feels like that in and of itself helps make the case for preserving this, because once these buildings are gone, even in their compromised state, we will never have that historic memorial to a set of ideas that was put forth by Mayor Humphrey to help the people who are less fortunate in our community become stronger members of our community. And so for that reason, I support designating this as a historic district and actually approving the nomination, going counter to what the staff recommend, although I understand why the staff have come to the conclusion that they have.
Thank you, Commissioner Melblom. Other thoughts, commissioners?
I just want to say thank you, Commissioner Melbourne. You state my feelings and then some.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Other thoughts? Go ahead.
I think, partially echoing those sentiments, I think a lot of the reports really focused on sort of the in a way, bureaucratic aspects of the preservation requirements. And I think following those, it is, I think, I would be on the fence. But really considering that Category 1 is about significance, there was some back and forth in some of those reports and findings about, okay, which year is it the year of the significance? And is it, to me, it's, yes, I think when it was built was significant. It was an idea to say that, in this country, in a democracy, our public assets are how we recognize the value of each other. And I think public housing plays into that. And also in Category 5, when we look at it as a broader district and in its landscape, I think there is something to be said that, yes, the buildings have been compromised individuals, but overall, that neighborhood hasn't changed in character from a volumetric standpoint, from an experience of a landscape standpoint. And those types of spaces are what creates a community. And so to me, I think it still does fall under the fact that it does maintain its integrity. And so for that, I think I'm also in favor of nominating this.
Thank you, Commissioner Carato. Other thoughts? Go ahead.
I think I would just echo what I'm hearing from my other commissioners in that I really struggle with this one in that the buildings have lost their integrity, or I feel like architecturally speaking, materially speaking, a lot of it has been lost. But from a cultural perspective, and maybe cultural as well, I think there's still a lot there. And Commissioner Melblom really, I think, stated that well with once it's gone, it's gone. Like this is the opportunity to identify that.
Thank you, Commissioner Maston. Other thoughts? Commissioner Booty?
I just want to echo what other commissioners have said, that I am also in support of this. I think the next step that we need to take is figuring out what our findings are going to be to see if we can come up with a motion that overturns staff findings. And I looking at the, as a reference point for the last time it was overturned, it seemed like the commission at that time went with the finding that the integrity is sufficient from a location and setting standpoint, as well as the uniformity of the brick facades and the gables, as well as the, I believe, the intentionality of the landscape. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a point of conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Booty. I did ask staff, knowing that there might be discussion about overturning the recommendations, what we need to do. So we do need to make findings. If we're going to overturn the recommendations, we need to make legal findings that can go into the record. And then we would make a motion that, notwithstanding staff recommendations, we'd approve the nomination, establish interim protection, and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study of the district. Now, so it's my understanding, and I'm going to ask staff and the clerk if I'm correct, we just need to make findings related to meeting the criterion at this point, not the integrity discussion, because this is for the nomination, not for the designation.
Secretary Howard, you can make findings that you feel are sufficient to overturn staff recommendations. So if they are relevant to the criteria, that's the most important, but also to integrity is relevant as well.
So it could be both. Does that make sense? And I would argue, I think everyone agrees, from what I'm hearing, everyone is agreeing that Criterion 1 does apply in this case. There seems to be some question, at least from the ownership, that Criterion 5 may not. I would argue that the quality of design in post-war landscape architecture, and in this development in particular, would meet Criterion 5. It doesn't have to be innovation, rarity, or uniqueness. It's quality of design. It is of the time. It is post-war. It can be a significant post-war development. So, would someone like to suggest some legal findings and make a motion? And I can help you with the motion part. Commissioner Melblom?
I'll try. Thank you, Chair Howard. So notwithstanding staff recommendation, I move that the HPC approve the nomination of the Glendale townhouses, as a historic district based on criteria 1, as the city's first affordable housing project, and based on criteria 5, understanding that the intentionality of the landscape and, as Commissioner Corrado said, the volumetric sensibility remains consistent today as it was when it was originally conceived.
So I would recommend that as part of that motion, you would also need to establish interim protection and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study.
Okay, can I amend what I said?
You can. I'm coaching at this point.
Thank you. I'd like to add to my motion that we establish interim protection and that the commission direct the staff to do a full designation study.
So what I heard was that Commissioner Mulblum has made a motion that notwithstanding staff recommendation, the HPC should approve this nomination, establish interim protection, and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study of the district based on the findings that he stated.
Yes.
Am I correct in that understanding?
Thank you.
Is there a second to that?
Merrill, second.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Secretary Howard, Commissioner Mulblum, I need the findings restated. I could not get them.
Could you restate those two findings?
Yes. The first finding was that, based on criterion 1, that this is the city's first affordable housing project, and in that manner, it has social and cultural relevance and importance. And then based on criteria 5, that the existing site retains the intentionality of the landscape and the volumetric sensibility is consistent with what was originally intended.
I almost got it. Excuse me one moment. Commissioner Mulblum, so I have it based on criterion 1 of the city's, it's based on criterion 1 is the city's first affordable housing project, and in that manner has social and cultural relevance and importance. And then also based on criterion 5, the existing site retains the intentionality and volumetrics, and I could not write fast enough from there. Can you please fill in? Thank you.
Yeah, the intentionality of the landscape and the volumetric sensibility is consistent with what was originally designed.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Merrill, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Merrill. Any further discussion?
I don't know if this is appropriate, but I feel like it was, from what was proposed or given to us, it not only was it the first, but it was the only of its time that was commissioned.
So are you recommending an amendment to his motion? I'm going to have to look to Robert's rules help.
It was more of a comment.
It was just a comment, okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mulblum.
Can I add one thing? I recognize that the Housing Authority is being put in a very uncomfortable position by this, and I don't make my motion without that regard. As an architect, I understand how difficult those homes will be to bring up to contemporary standards. And I think that that is something that we all need to acknowledge, that there are historical artifacts are at times incompatible with the way we live in modern life and the way that we want to have other people live in modern life. But I feel that this designation should overrule that practicality, because I think that this is an important part of our history, our social history as a city, that has long been disregarded, and it's time for it to be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you wanting to say something else?
Secretary Howard, yes, I just want to make triple sure that the motion states all correct pieces that direct staff. So if you wouldn't mind just stating, I have the findings down, but you can, state that the findings that were stated, but if you could just repeat it to make sure for the record, because there was one part I'm questionable about hearing, and that has implications for staff moving forward.
It's my
Thank you.
understanding that Commissioner Mulblum has made a motion that, notwithstanding staff recommendation, the Preservation Commission approve the nomination, establish interim protection, and direct the planning director to prepare or cause to be prepared a designation study of the district based on the findings that he has said.
Thank you.
Does that have everything that you need?
That does. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Mulblum, for your acknowledgement of the concerns related to the work that would need to happen there in the future. The good thing about historic district designations is that we do have the opportunity to put together design guidelines that are appropriate to the district. And we have done this before in other districts that have had integrity concerns, and it allows some more flexibility in those design guidelines that hopefully will be able to work for the owner. And that process is usually a public process. I would assume it would be the same way here, should this get designated after the next step in our process. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Booty.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
Hare.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Carato.
Aye.
Maston.
Aye.
Melblum.
Aye.
Merrill.
Aye.
There are 8 ayes.
Thank you, that motion passes. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to come here to speak with us. All right, on to the next. Do commissioners or staff have any announcements or commission business to discuss? And I always start with staff, so Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Andrea Burke, Supervisor for the Historic Preservation team and CPAD. Just 2 quick updates. One, the African American Heritage Work Group is finishing interviews, and we are bringing forward candidates for appointment, beginning that process within the next few weeks to begin holding meetings relatively soon. And then also we will be holding an engagement meeting on June 13th, our second one for the 5th Street Southeast Resurvey, which is a certified local government grant. And I have no further updates. Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other announcements? All right. With that, we have completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. I'll ask members and staff once more if there are any other matters to come before the commission. There being no other business to come before this meeting, and without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting of the Heritage Preservation Commission is scheduled for June 18th, 2024. Thank you all.